Alright everyone, welcome back to my channel, Marriage is Not the End. Here, we try to see through the romantic filters people put on love and look at human nature as it really is. We talk about marriage as a problem to be solved, and ask whether, besides getting married or getting divorced, there might be a third answer. Today's story is a long one, and honestly, it hits a little close to the heart. It's about a girl on the verge of getting married, and a friend who suddenly comes back from overseas. The heroine of our story is Emily, 24 years old. She's straightforward, the kind of person who loves with her whole heart. Her fiancé is James, 32, successful in his career, calm and considerate, the kind of perfect boyfriend that makes everyone around them jealous. They've been together for 4 years and are finally about to get married. Emily feels that the greatest stroke of luck in her life was meeting James at the most beautiful time of her youth. He tolerates all her little tempers, fulfills every one of her requests, reasonable or not, and spoils her like a child who never has to grow up. Emily thought this kind of happiness would last forever. Until the night before the wedding, when she went to James's place, and saw the woman lying on his couch. Emily pushed open the door to James's apartment. She had spent 4 hours getting ready, wearing brand new lingerie she thought James would like, expecting a romantic evening. Instead, she saw a strange woman casually stretched out on the living room couch, as if she owned the place. James, on the other hand, looked completely calm, as if this were the most ordinary thing in the world. As usual, he guided Emily to the entryway, helped her take off her high heels, and went to the cabinet to find her pair of pink house slippers that he always kept for her. He searched for a moment but couldn't find them. Emily tapped him on the shoulder and gestured toward the couch. James glanced over, then simply smiled indulgently. Lowering his voice, he introduced the woman. I forgot to mention, this is my friend from overseas, Lynn. She came back specially to attend our wedding. After saying that, he tiptoed over to the couch as if afraid of waking the woman, gently slid the slippers out from under her legs, then crouched down in front of Emily. He carefully wiped the dust off the bottom of her feet before slipping the shoes on for her. From the moment she walked in, Emily felt a tight knot forming in her chest. James almost never let outsiders into his home. Even his closest friends were rarely invited over. Yet this woman named Lynn could come and go freely. That special treatment made Emily deeply uneasy. She deliberately stomped her feet loudly, trying to wake the woman, hoping it might even start a fight, just to see whose side James would take. James, older than her by several years, of course saw right through her childish little scheme. He shook his head helplessly, patted her on the head, and carried the groceries into the kitchen, treating her mood like nothing more than a playful attempt to compete for his attention. Emily grew even angrier. She went out to the balcony and smoked 2 cigarettes. By the time she came back inside, the woman had woken up. The woman looked Emily up and down, her eyes carrying a mix of scrutiny and provocation. She raised an eyebrow and said, "Hello. You must be Emily, right?" Emily ignored her completely. She simply didn't like the woman. The woman didn't seem offended. She let out a faint laugh through her nose, like someone amused by a child's bad manners. Then she walked barefoot over to James and leaned in to whisper something in his ear. Emily couldn't hear what they were saying, so she asked loudly, "What are you two talking about me for?" They both turned around at the same time. One of them, James, was holding a strawberry with the stem removed, looking at her with gentle affection. The other, Lynn, was chewing a strawberry, her eyes openly mocking. Lynn laughed and said, "Are you sure she's only 8 years younger than you? She looks more like a 15-year-old kid to me." "James, you didn't trick a minor into dating you, did you?" Then she burst into exaggerated laughter, even reaching out as if to slap James on the chest. But James sidestepped and avoided her hand. For a split second, Emily noticed a flash of displeasure cross Lynn's face, but it quickly disappeared. James walked over to Emily with the strawberries, his eyes full of amusement. "My little girl," he said softly, "will always be a kid in my eyes." He placed a strawberry into Emily's mouth, then added quietly, "She likes to joke around. She's not a bad person." Emily's heart suddenly skipped a beat. James rarely praised anyone. And a woman he allowed to walk in and out of his house freely, a woman who joked and teased with him so casually, how could she be described as merely not a bad person? Just how important was this woman to him? What happened next turned Emily's unease into pure torment. Lynn began treating her with the air of an elder, speaking down to her like a teacher lecturing a child. "Little girl, smoking isn't good for your health, and James doesn't like strange smells in the house. Be a good girl, quit." She criticized Emily's clothes and makeup. "Tsk. This outfit is way too common, and the material looks cheap. Pink blush doesn't suit you, you should use orange." Honestly, your current style doesn't match James at all. When I have time, I'll give you a makeover myself. She treated Emily like nothing more than a pampered little songbird kept beside James, assuming that in front of someone from such a distinguished family, Emily wouldn't dare cause trouble. But she was wrong. Emily had never been the type to stay silent when someone pushed her around. She spoke up directly. "Auntie." The moment that word came out, Lynn's face froze. "Auntie, when you judge me like that, do you mean I'm not good enough for James? Or are you saying that compared to me, you'd be a better match for him? Then why didn't he marry you? Is it because you're too old? How old are you this year? 38? 40? Or is your real age 50, and after all that cosmetic work you only look 68? Emily fired off one line after another, each word like a knife. James stood beside them watching her with a grin, looking both proud and amused as he said to Lynn, "Lynn, you can't win against her. That little mouth of hers is sharp." Emily felt like she had one. On James's face, there was nothing but indulgence and affection. She was so pleased with herself she practically had her tail in the air. But she soon realized, maybe she hadn't won at all. Because when James's parents called for a video chat, the first person they recognized was Lynn. They greeted her warmly, asking about her well-being, completely forgetting that their future daughter-in-law was standing right there beside them. Emily felt like an outsider, left awkwardly to the side. James noticed her mood and quickly hung up, suggesting that Lynn stay at a hotel instead. But on the other end of the call, James's mother immediately said, "Why stay at a hotel? Come back to the old house and stay here. You can keep us company for a few days." Emily panicked and quickly added, "Mom, I can stay with you too. I came these past few days specifically to see you and Dad." James's mother waved her hand with a smile. "Emily, you just spend time with James. We old folks can't keep up with the things you young people enjoy. Let Lynn stay with me, she can sing Beijing opera and keep me entertained." Emily could only respond with a quiet, disappointed "oh." After Lynn left, James hugged Emily and comforted her. "My mom practically raised her," he explained. "She's basically my mom's goddaughter. Mom just misses her." "Goddaughter?" Emily frowned. "Yeah. Lynn's parents passed away early. She basically grew up with our family. Don't worry, we're just like siblings. Besides, our family helped her a lot growing up. She only wants to repay that kindness. She's never thought about marrying me." But the more James explained, the more uneasy Emily felt. Seeing her frown deeply, James laughed. He gently lifted her chin and teased, "Emily, are you jealous again?" Emily nodded and admitted it. She knew she could be possessive. Ever since they started dating, James had made sure there were no other women around him, doing everything a good fiancé should. But she still liked to stir things up, sometimes dropping by his office to check on him or questioning his friends. James had gotten used to it. He even said he liked this kind of intense love. That was why they'd made it all the way to the point of getting married. But she hadn't expected someone like Lynn to suddenly appear and catch her completely off guard. That night, James comforted her until she calmed down, and everything seemed to return to normal. But the thorn in Emily's heart had already been planted. There was no way she would let Lynn and James's mother spend time alone together. In her mind, Lynn was like a ticking time bomb, showing up out of nowhere with bad intentions, probably planning to sabotage the wedding. So early the next morning, Emily went straight to the family's old house. It was a little awkward though, she had arrived empty-handed. Lynn, meanwhile, carried a thermos in one hand and James's mother's favorite pastries in the other, calling her godmother affectionately. The two of them sat in the courtyard chatting about James's childhood, his funny stories, the embarrassing things he did as a kid. Lynn even mimicked him vividly, making the old lady laugh non-stop. Then they started talking about the girlfriends James had dated over the years, saying each one was worse than the last. When Emily's name came up, the old woman simply curled her lip in dissatisfaction and quietly said while holding Lynn's hand, "What a pity. That boy James must be blind, refusing such a wonderful girl like you." Lynn looked unconcerned. "Godmother, why bring that up? James likes that little girl. He protects her like she's the most precious thing in the world. Don't let him hear you say that, he'll definitely get upset." The old lady shook her head helplessly. "There's no helping it. No one can change his mind." Emily stood outside the door watching all of this, unable to describe the feeling in her chest. It felt like her relationship with James had no supporters in the entire world, except the two of them. But that complicated emotion lasted only a moment. What she felt more strongly was anger. Lynn knew the Shen family far too well. If she wanted to interfere, she probably had hundreds of ways to do it. Emily's face flushed red, her feet feeling glued to the ground. A few minutes later, an idea suddenly came to her. To please the old lady, she specially asked a friend who owned a restaurant to prepare a full table of authentic Shanghai dishes, because James had once mentioned that his mother was from Shanghai. When the dishes were finally served, the old lady's eyes lit up immediately. She nodded gracefully and said, "That was very thoughtful of you." Emily was thrilled. One by one, she introduced every dish to her. In the corner of the table, however, sat the pastries Lynn had brought, already cold. Emily felt like she had won this round. As long as she pleased her future mother-in-law, Lynn's attempts to stir up trouble wouldn't matter. But that sense of victory didn't last long. On her way to the restroom, Emily passed by the backyard and saw James. He had told her earlier that he couldn't come because he had work at the company today. She quietly tiptoed closer. Lynn was standing there with a cigarette between the fingers of her right hand, her left arm folded across her chest, talking to James, who was sitting on a bench. "Yesterday you were lecturing my little girl about how smoking is bad," James said, taking the cigarette from her hand. "So why are you smoking again?" He took 2 puffs himself. Emily's heart sank. James smoked? She had never known. But what shocked her even more was that Lynn started crying. She leaned on James's shoulder and cried. James's hands hovered awkwardly in the air. He didn't hug her, but he spoke softly to comfort her. "She's just a kid. Why are you taking it so seriously?" Lynn sniffed and said through her tears, "I'm not a bad woman. James, you know that. I've never tried to interfere in your marriage. As long as I see you living well, that's enough for me. But why does Emily get to come to Godmother's house and act like she belongs there? Like I'm actually trying to steal you away. Now even Godmother has misunderstood me." She paused, then said stubbornly, "Humph. If I really wanted you, after all these years, all I'd have to do is crook my finger and you'd come running. Would it really be her turn, some little kid like that?" James laughed at her words. All right. If you crook your finger, I'll come. Don't cry anymore, okay? My mom is still waiting for you to sing for her." After half a minute, Lynn composed herself and let go of him. Then she said thoughtfully, "Forget it. For your sake, I should probably talk to your little girl properly. Otherwise she'll keep suspecting me and turn your house upside down." James crushed the cigarette under his shoe. "For all I care," he said flatly. Before leaving the old house, Lynn stopped Emily. She led her skillfully into a tea room and said, like the hostess of the house, "Don't be shy, sit anywhere." Emily choked on her words. She had never even been in this place before. She didn't even know that James liked calligraphy. The walls were covered with his writing. Lynn didn't get straight to the point. Instead, she started introducing the pieces one by one. Pointing at a piece with rather clumsy handwriting, she said, "This was written when James was 8. No real talent." Then she pointed to another one near the door. "This one he wrote 3 years ago. Still no talent. His father even told him to stop wasting time on it, but he's as stubborn as ever. But what's the use? If you don't have talent, you don't have talent. No matter how much you like it, you'll never accomplish anything." Her words clearly carried a double meaning. Emily understood. Her face darkened. For a moment she even wanted to grab the inkstone on the table and smash it. But she held back. For the first time, she suppressed her temper. She mentally put that on James's tab. Lynn noticed that Emily was angry and looked pleased with herself. Only then did she say, "Little girl, I hope you don't misunderstand. James and I really are just like siblings. It's not what you're imagining. Don't worry, I won't take him away from you. At least not while he still likes you." She said this with a smug expression, not sounding like someone trying to clarify anything at all. Emily finally snapped. Her eyes fell on the inkstone, and a flash of hostility crossed her face. Just as Lynn began to speak again, Emily rushed forward, grabbed the heavy inkstone, and smashed it toward Lynn's head. "Emily, what are you doing?" A furious shout came from the doorway. It was James. Blood ran down Lynn's forehead, but the expression on her face was even more triumphant. In that moment, Emily finally understood what people meant when they said experience beats youth every time. At the hospital, Lynn lay in a bed with her forehead wrapped in bandages. She looked magnanimous, generously forgiving Emily for her mistake. The old lady clutched Lynn's hand nervously, too angry to even speak. James was clearly holding back his temper as well, but he didn't scold Emily in front of everyone. Instead, he held Emily's hand and apologized to Lynn. "Emily definitely didn't mean to do it. Please don't take it to heart. I'll take you out for dinner another day. By the way, didn't you like that house out in the suburbs? I'll buy it and give it to you as an apology." Lynn smiled and didn't refuse. "Then I'll thank you in advance." After leaving the hospital, James drove Emily home. The entire way, he didn't say a word. Emily grew afraid and began explaining what had happened. She said Lynn had deliberately provoked her, deliberately set a trap, willing to hurt herself just to make James believe Emily was a vicious woman. Suddenly, James slammed on the brakes. He turned to look at Emily. He was angry. Emily thought he was angry about what Lynn had done. But instead he said, "Emily, that's enough." He was blaming her. His voice was full of frustration, anger, and emotions barely held back from exploding. Under his gaze, Emily felt completely lost. She had never seen him this angry before. He had never even called her by her full name. Her eyes reddened with hurt, but he ignored it and continued venting. "Emily, stop causing trouble. Haven't you made enough scenes these past few days? Yes, you're young, you can make mistakes. But this is too much. This is physical assault. What were you thinking? Do you really think I'm going to clean up your mess for the rest of my life?" Emily felt awful hearing those words, but she still tried to explain. James raised his hand to stop her. "Fine," he said bitterly. "Don't blame you, blame me, okay? The whole world is evil except you. I'm the one who chose to deal with a spoiled little princess. That's my problem." Emily hated the way he was talking. "That's not what I meant. I never said that." But James had already stopped listening. Suddenly, like a man possessed, he slapped the steering wheel and shouted at her, "Emily, can you grow up a little? For you, I just gave away a house worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. What more do you want? Can you stop causing trouble for me?" Emily was completely terrified. His sudden rage was suffocating. This version of him felt like a stranger. She gasped for breath, her hands trembling as she unfastened her seatbelt. "I want to get out. I want to get out," she murmured. James seemed to snap back to his senses. "Emily, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to yell." Emily slapped his hand away. "Don't touch me. I want to go home." She unbuckled her seatbelt and got out of the car. Outside, heavy rain poured down mercilessly, soaking her to the bone. But suddenly she felt relieved. At least it was still early enough. Right now she was only getting wet in the rain. Otherwise, she might have been trapped in a lifelong storm. Emily came down with a high fever. Through the haze, she heard James talking beside her, reasoning with her, apologizing. He said Lynn would eventually go back overseas and wouldn't be a problem between them. He said losing his temper was his fault. He asked what she wanted, he would buy anything for her. Emily half closed her eyes and pretended not to hear. Finally, she sighed and laid everything on the table. "James, let's not get married." James stiffened immediately. He turned her face toward him. "Emily, what kind of joke is this? We just had an argument. How does that turn into canceling the engagement?" Emily opened her eyes and looked at the man who was both familiar and strangely unfamiliar. "I feel like I don't even know you anymore. I didn't know you smoked. I didn't know you loved calligraphy. And I didn't know that behind your calm face, there was someone who could lose control and yell at me." She continued quietly. "I'm 24. In your 32-year-old eyes, I'm just a kid. For these 4 years of dating, you've been good to me unconditionally. Whatever I asked for, you agreed. You made me feel like I could stay a child forever. But I can't stay a child forever. I have to grow up someday. I'll experience pain eventually. I imagined what kinds of hardships life might throw at me. I just never thought the first knife that would stab me would come from you. Maybe it's because I depended on you too much. That's why the hurt you caused feels especially painful." She paused. "Let's just not get married. I don't want to keep wondering if more sisters or childhood friends will suddenly appear around you. And I don't want to wonder whether you'll lose your temper at me again someday. I can't handle that. Let's just break up." Tears slid from the corners of her eyes into her hair. James tightened his grip on her hand. But he couldn't say a word. Later, Lynn came to see Emily again. She apologized, saying things had gotten too serious if the engagement was really cancelled. She told Emily not to be angry, that she had only been teasing her like a child. James was in the kitchen making porridge, running back and forth between the kitchen and bedroom. He chimed in too, saying Lynn had no bad intentions. She had only teased Emily because she thought she was cute. He thought bringing Lynn over to apologize would make Emily forgive them. But how could it? James couldn't tell whether Lynn was sincere or pretending. Emily could see it clearly. She stared at Lynn. Lynn grew uncomfortable, so she pretended to fuss over Emily, tucking the blanket around her and saying a few polite words. Then she started wandering around the house, touching things, stepping here and there. Suddenly she exclaimed, "Oh my God! Isn't this the carpet we bought together when we were 23? You still have it?" James smiled gently. "Yeah. It's good quality." She pointed at a stuffed toy on the desk and laughed. "This doll looks just like me. Can I have it?" James shook his head. "No. Emily bought that for me." Lynn pouted. "Oh. She kept looking around. When James finished the porridge and sat down, she immediately spoke in a familiar, commanding tone. Spoon. Here. Any side dishes? I'll go get some. Bring me some tissues too. Okay. They were so comfortable with each other, like an old married couple. Emily lay half reclined on the sofa, like their sick child. The scene felt absurd. She laughed bitterly. Finally she couldn't take it anymore. She grabbed a pillow and threw it toward them. Get out. Get out of my house. Lynn muttered in a mocking, sarcastic tone, this is James's house. If anyone should get out, it should be you. James snapped at her, clearly annoyed. Lynn, shut up. Oh, so now they were singing the same tune like husband and wife? Fine. Then she'd leave. Dragging her weak body behind her, Emily grabbed her suitcase and headed for the door. James stopped her. Emily, you still have a fever. Don't move around. I'll go, okay? I'll leave. But Emily's temper had already flared. She stormed out anyway. She didn't actually want James to come after her. Ideally, he would just leave her alone, and then this relationship could end cleanly. But if he chased after her like he always used to, trying everything he could to calm her down and coax her back, she wasn't sure she wouldn't soften. After all, James hadn't technically done anything outrageous. He had just yelled at her a few times. It almost seemed as though he had only been cleaning up her messes all along, and losing his temper once in a while was understandable. The moment that thought crossed her mind, she slapped herself. Pathetic. And of course, he still chased after her. Lynn followed behind him, and the two of them searched the streets for her, one after the other. It was the busiest time of night, and if Emily had slipped into the crowd, James never would have found her. But she softened after all. Deliberately, she sat down on a bench in a less crowded area, somewhere they could spot her instantly. She even felt a little smug about it. But the next second, Lynn suddenly cried out, "Ah! That hurts." James turned around at once, and Lynn's eyes reddened. "What is it?" he asked. "Is your old injury acting up again?" Lynn's old injury was from years ago, when she had been teaching James how to ride a bicycle. It flared up from time to time. Half of Emily's heart went cold. She watched helplessly as James lifted Lynn into his arms and carried her to another bench not far away from hers. That was it. And this time, when she told herself that's enough, she really meant it. She stood up and pulled her suitcase, ready to leave. The next second, a child of 8 or 9 came zipping past her on a skateboard. She wasn't paying attention and got knocked into a nearby stone. Blood immediately began pouring down her forehead. The child was already gone. She was feverish, dizzy, and in no condition to get herself to a hospital. She called out James's name. He looked over, his face tense, but obviously not because of her. He came toward her carrying Lynn in his arms, then, without even waiting for her to speak, walked right past her. And Emily saw the triumph in Lynn's eyes clearly. She was certain James had heard her voice. He had just made his choice. Between her and Lynn, he chose Lynn. Luckily, Emily's injury wasn't serious. The nurse cleaned it up and bandaged it, and she was free to leave. Just as she was about to go, James suddenly appeared and blocked her path. "I'm sorry. Lynn's old injury flared up just now, so I couldn't get to you in time. Are you okay? Was it serious?" See? She had been right. He had known she was hurt. It was just that whenever there was a choice involving Lynn, he automatically stopped choosing her. Emily took half a step back and said politely, "I'm fine. I still have a flight to catch, so I'm leaving." She turned to go, but James caught her by the wrist. "Emily, what exactly are you angry about?" He sounded helpless, like he genuinely didn't understand why she was upset. It was the same as every other time she got mad. He would come over and coax her without ever asking why. He never really knew what she was angry about. He only knew he had to soothe her, pamper her more, apologize first, and then they would make up. But this time was different. This had to do with the rest of her life. She couldn't just hand herself over to a man whose boundaries with another woman were this blurred. So she repeated herself, "Forget the engagement. When I get back, I'll explain everything to my parents. Don't contact me again." James refused to let go of her hand. Only when Lynn's voice came from behind him did he finally release her. "Goodbye, James." After she went back, Emily deleted every possible way to contact James. She also told their mutual friends not to mention her to him. So they didn't see each other for 3 months. The next time they met was at an alumni gathering. James and Lynn, as older alumni, were making the rounds to toast the younger graduates. The moment he saw Emily, James visibly panicked. Lynn grabbed his wrist, signaling him not to lose composure. When he came to Emily's table to offer a toast, he said quietly, "Emily, I waited downstairs outside your building for a long time. Why wouldn't you see me? Then he straightened up, smiled gently, and went right back to looking like the refined, elegant senior alumnus. Emily forced a tight smile and drank her wine. James took the opportunity to sit down beside her. No matter how Lynn tugged at him, he refused to leave. Quite a few people there knew about their relationship. The atmosphere became awkward, and whispers began to spread around the table. Emily didn't want to become the subject of gossip, so she threw him a warning. James, don't push me. If you keep pushing me like this, I'm capable of doing anything. He smiled, almost indulgently. I know perfectly well that you're capable of anything. It's okay, go ahead. Whatever you do, I'll always back you up. That roguish side of him was rare. Emily got furious. She grabbed the hand of the boy sitting next to her. The boy jolted in surprise, his face instantly turning bright red. Then she continued her threat. If you don't leave, I'll kiss him right here in front of everyone. James knew she would actually do it. After all, back when they first got together, it had happened in a similar setting. She had kissed him first. Afterward, he complained that she was too reckless, that she couldn't just go around kissing any guy she grabbed. But saying any of that now was useless. She just wanted him gone. And it worked. He got jealous and left, dragging the chair back so hard it made a loud scraping sound. After he left, the young man whose hand she had grabbed asked her, "Sis, you done playing around yet?" Emily gave an absent "oh," and let go of him. The boy was her cousin, newly returned from overseas. James didn't know him. For the rest of the evening, Emily still couldn't avoid becoming the center of conversation. When she was finally leaving, James walked over from beside her car. "Which hotel are you staying at? I'll drive you back." Emily said there was no need. He turned sideways and blocked her hand from opening the car door. "Emily, we were already at the point of talking about marriage. Can you really let go that easily?" She nodded coldly. He persisted. "Stop throwing a childish tantrum. I know you can't let me go either. Can we start over? Lynn is my mother's goddaughter, basically my sister. Of course I have to look after her. But if it bothers you, I'll see her less from now on. She lives overseas most of the time anyway. She really won't interfere with us again." Same old explanation. James was still repeating the same script. Emily was exhausted just listening to it. "The engagement is already off. Stop bothering me. Let's just each live our own lives." The moment she finished speaking, Lynn appeared again. Her voice was trembling with tears. "Emily, this is all my fault. I was the one with no sense of boundaries. I ruined your wedding. It's all my fault, all my fault." As she spoke, she really looked on the verge of crying. James frowned tightly. But this time, there was no tenderness in his face at all. If anything, he looked disgusted. "Stop talking. Go wait in the car." But Lynn refused to give up. She kept crying. "James, it really is all my fault. I never should have come back. If it weren't for me, you and Emily would already be married by now. Godmother would have lived to see your wedding too. But because of me, she never got to see you get married before she died." The moment she said that, James's eyes turned red. "Shut up," he roared in a low voice. "I told you not to say another word." Lynn looked startled and stumbled back a few steps, finally falling silent. Then James said, "Tell the truth. Did you come back this time because of my mother's inheritance?" The moment those words came out, Lynn panicked. "James, what? What are you talking about? That money was something Godmother gave me willingly. She knew it wasn't easy for a woman to survive alone overseas, so she gave it to me. Don't overthink it. Your company is doing well anyway, you don't need that little bit of money." Now that was gossip. Emily quietly stepped aside, ready to enjoy the show. James let out a cold laugh. "Willingly? Then why don't you mention that you got married overseas? Why don't you mention that your ex-husband abroad was a gambler? You only came back because you were broke, didn't you? You knew how much my mother loved you. If you asked her for money, would she have said no? Did you really have to go out of your way to upset her too?" Lynn was still trying to play dumb, but then suddenly her face changed in alarm and she backed away. Following her line of sight, Emily saw a bearded man running toward her. The two of them took off, one chasing, one fleeing, and quickly disappeared into the crowd. Meanwhile, James's mood had sunk completely, clearly because he had brought up his late mother. Emily was shocked too. Just that spring, his mother had still looked healthy and full of energy. How could she be gone by fall? People in their circle had only said that she had passed away. No one had ever mentioned the cause. But James was a seasoned businessman. Even after his mother's death and his fiancé breaking off the engagement, he still had to keep going to work as usual. Emily had heard that during those 3 months, Muffled sobs were often heard coming from his office, but only for a few moments at a time, and then silence again. It seemed he had been suppressing himself for a very long time. Emily felt sorry for what he had gone through. But pity wasn't enough to make her let him back into her life. So in the end, all she did was hand him a tissue before driving away. The next time Emily saw James was at a business dinner. Her uncle wanted her to go into business and was bringing her around to meet people, and James happened to be one of them. At the dinner, James looked much more worn down than before. His company also seemed far less powerful than it once had been. The moment he saw Emily, a flash of surprise lit up his face. Maybe because it was winter, he instinctively reached for her hands to warm them, asking if she was cold and whether she wanted tea. He walked her to her seat, and his eyes barely left her for more than 3 seconds. As the youngest person at the table, Emily stood up to pour drinks for everyone. James couldn't bear to let her lower herself like that. He took the bottle from her hand. "I'll pour. Sit down." Everyone assumed he was simply being considerate toward a woman. What they didn't know was that he was only being considerate toward her. A few rounds of drinks later, everyone was somewhat drunk. Protected by both her uncle and James, Emily hadn't had much to drink and ended up being the only sober person there. She paid the bill, helped the drunk guests into their cars, and even called a designated driver for James. But when the driver arrived, James still refused to leave. He hadn't drunk that much, but he started talking as if he were delirious. "Emily, I'm sorry. I couldn't tell right from wrong, and I let you suffer. That was all my fault. But tell me, is there really nothing I can do now to win you back? You're more resolute than I ever imagined. Emily, I really fell hard for you. You little brat." As he spoke, he took off his coat and handed it to her. "You're wearing so little again. You must be freezing." Then he asked one last question. "Emily, you know you're the only one I've ever loved, right?" He looked like he desperately wanted to hear her answer. But the designated driver had run out of patience. He shoved James into the car, stepped on the gas, and drove away. Emily gave a small wave. And that was their real goodbye. Yes, she knew that James loved her. He didn't love Lynn. But the vague, tangled relationship between him and Lynn was something she simply couldn't accept. Maybe James never meant for it to be that way. Maybe they had just grown used to that invisible tug-of-war between them since childhood. Still, Emily couldn't live with it. So that was the end of their story. Later, Emily's uncle took her to look at a potential office space for a company. As they drove, the streets started to look strangely familiar. When they stopped on a familiar floor of a building, she suddenly realized. "Wait, isn't this James's company?" Her uncle shook his head and sighed. Yes. It was his. The man we had dinner with before. Such a shame, he had real talent and vision. But he was ruined by a woman. Emily felt a bit uneasy. It couldn't be that bad, could it? Had his company really collapsed because of her? But her uncle's next words made her realize she had been overestimating her importance. Apparently, Lynn and her ex-husband from overseas had been showing up at the company building for nearly half a year, making scenes and demanding money. They caused so much trouble that the entire building was constantly disturbed. The property management eventually had no choice but to ask James to move his company elsewhere. But wherever he moved, Lynn followed. She wouldn't stop until she got money, and even after she got it, she still wouldn't stop. She simply treated him like an endless ATM. Her uncle sighed again. James is a talented man. Such a pity. And it was true. In business, James would have been an excellent partner. But in marriage, that was another matter. At least for Emily, he was not the right person to marry. Marriage was too important. She had to take it seriously. Extremely seriously. There could be no mistakes. Not even a single moment of weakness. So in the years after they broke up, whenever James occasionally tried to get back together with her, her answer was always the same. No, and that's the end of today's story. By now, I'm sure everyone listening has formed their own opinion. Some people might ask, was Emily too decisive? After all, James never actually cheated. He explained that Lynn was just like a sister. In the end, he even saw Lynn's true nature. He loved Emily, and Emily knew it. So why not give each other another chance? I think Emily's decisiveness was actually her clearest moment. The James she fell in love with was a perfect boyfriend who adored her endlessly, as long as everything stayed within a safe distance. But Lynn's appearance was like a scalpel, cutting open the beautiful surface of their relationship and revealing what was underneath. Emily realized she didn't fully know the man she was supposed to spend the rest of her life with. She didn't know he smoked. She didn't know he loved calligraphy. She didn't know that behind his calm exterior was someone who could lose control and shout at her. But what she couldn't accept even more was James's unconscious double standard when facing another woman with whom he shared deep emotional ties. He could walk past her while she was injured because Lynn's old injury hurt more. He could say he loved only Emily while still allowing another woman to move comfortably through every corner of their lives. That kind of intrusion wasn't physical betrayal. It was an emotional and habitual boundary crossing. And in some ways, it's harder to define and harder to endure. It's like a grain of sand inside your shoe. No one else can see it. But with every step you take, it hurts. Emily once said that the pain James caused hurt more than anything else, because she had relied on him too much. When the person who once sheltered you from every storm suddenly becomes the storm itself, you realize that even the strongest fortress may have cracks inside. She chose to leave not because she didn't love him, but because she loved him too much to accept a love mixed with something that constantly made her uneasy. She didn't want to spend a lifetime doubting, questioning, and fighting against a shadow. Marriage isn't the end goal, and a relationship that slowly consumes who you are is definitely not the end goal. Emily's choice might seem lonely. It might seem ruthless. But she protected her boundaries, and protected the possibility of a better future. In her own way, she reminded us of something important. Love is important. But dignity, clarity, and boundaries within love are even more important. Alright, that's today's story. If you enjoy my channel, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. And feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments. See you next time.